Hi, everyone. Welcome. If you haven't heard my voice all day today, I'm RJ. I run a creator management company called Sixteenth, and I'm here with John Liu, who we're going to talk about and get to know throughout this conversation. And at the end, if we have some time, we'll do some Q&A. And if we do Q&A, if you guys can shift up as much as possible, and I'll run and I'll get the mics to everybody the way that they need to. So, John, first off, tell me about your career with creators specifically, and what are you doing right now in this moment?
Sure. I started in the creator space. As you know, MrBeast is a large creator, one of the biggest. MrBeast a couple of years ago, has been starting to expand his enterprise, and part of that enterprise was, doing financial services startups for creators. And so I joined that, and then I learned all about the creator world, on how creators have been lacking in terms of like getting help in their business operations, their finances. And so we created a startup to help creators with that. When I was there, one of the benefits of working for a financial services company, you get to see which creators are doing extremely well. And after that role, I ended up working with a creator called Chikin Chow. Chikin Chow is now at like 100 million subscribers.
A juggernaut.
Yeah. Great team to work with. At that point, a lot of creators at the 50 to 100 million subscriber level have been looking for a lot more management. A lot of creators realize like, hey, I want to make content. I don't want to deal with all these business operations, performance management. And so they would hire somebody like me to come in and help. After Chikin Chow, I now work for Zhong. Zhong is a family and kids creator. We have around 70 million subscribers on YouTube, around 90 million subscribers across the board. And so as CEO of Zhong, I work to manage the daily performance of our crew. We have around 250 hires, most of them contractors. So that's more of the tactical side. And on the strategic side, I work to figure out where our business should be investing next in terms of like partnerships and business development.
So you were in the financial services side before this, on the banking side before this. What intrigued you about creators once you started working with them that's continued since that time?
The major theme that, and I'm going to mention this a couple times, is that I do feel like creators are a very disruptive force in a good way. One example is Feastables by MrBeast is, within the first 3 years of operating, they hit 9 figures in revenue. And so I wanted to be a force within that change. And I've been able to do that. And so that's kind of like the key thing that intrigues me is that we command a lot of views. So Zhong, we do around 500 million views a month. And so when we direct those views in any direction, a lot of things change. Brands get more sales, certain things get more awareness. And so I think, again, what intrigues me is how powerful we are in terms of like being able to disrupt whatever we put our attention to.
Now, when you're working with these large creators, what is your day-to-day life like right now? I know every day is probably incredibly different. I'm assuming because you're here, your inbox is like filled with
Yes.
emergencies and non-emergencies and things that you're doing that are less timely. So like, what is the day-to-day life like right now? And do you ever sleep?
I do sleep a lot, which is great.
Good. Sleep is good.
I do think, people think people do think that there's a little bit of a misnomer of smaller creators versus larger creators. We still have the same issues that many smaller creators have, which is how do we develop and nurture talent? You're going to often hear creators like, oh, like I just can't get the editor perfect for me, or I can't get a producer that's just right. So like, I think a lot of the day to day is in the tactics of like how to nurture a great culture that fosters innovation. So specifically, for example, like how do we get our scriptwriter to innovate more, have more trending topics, or how do we get the DP to plan more exciting shots? So that's more of like on the tactical day-to-day stuff. And then in terms of like visionary and strategy, it's more of like, how can we expand the Zhong brand beyond what we're currently doing? So how do we get into consumer products? How do we do like an original TV show, which we're in the process of doing? How do we expand ourselves to different countries? How do we syndicate ourselves to different platforms? So that's more on the strategic side that I work on. So it's really 50% is like daily, like operations management, and 50% is like strategy and business development.
Now, I've worked on both sides of this when I was at Paramount or Disney ABC and those sorts of companies.
And we work together too.
And we work together, which is fun too,
Right.
which we'll get to in a little bit. But I've worked at media companies. You talk about 250 employees. You talk about what you're trying to build. Creators are media companies. They're not even mini media companies. They are media companies. So what traits do you see in creators that transform themselves from being a personality, being a creator, to being a media company? And what does that transition look like once they do it?
I think the biggest thing that I see in terms of creators versus creators who sort of become media companies is that there's definitely a distinction between, there's a certain creator who does not want to deal with people. And if you don't like to deal with people, like it's quite difficult to become like a media empire.
Should we game show it and guess who it is? No, just kidding.
No.
I know who it is.
And for what it's worth, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people are purists of their talent and they just want to do their art. They just want to be in the room, film. You know, I've met some of the most niche creators, like this person I've worked, she loved keyboards. She liked the ASMR of keyboards, and she just wants to do that. She doesn't want to deal with management. She's not trying to take over the world. And you know, that's great too. And so the creators of the traits that you do see of creators who do want to become big is, they kind of have like a chip on their shoulder. And it was kind of like what Mari in our previous panel said, which was like, in some ways there is an imposter syndrome. Even for us at our size, we're like, why can't we be like MrBeast size? You know, what's next? How do we become like the next biggest, you know, Warner Brothers studio? You know, how do we just having that burning desire and burning ambition to be like a big mogul like empire is like one of the key traits that you really need, because managing a large company is a lot of work and there's a lot of politics, and you need a certain chip on your shoulder, I believe, to like really push through all that like work.
I think one of the things that people don't realize is when people think content creator, they think kind of one thing. It's kind of like a monolith. And the comparison that I make all the time is my cousin is an actress. She considers herself an actress. She lives on the west side of Michigan. She does her community theater productions and she loves it. And that's the peak of what she's doing. Then there are friends of mine who get booked in specific commercials or TV shows or movies. They have an agent and a manager and they do that sort of thing. And then there are the Meryl Streeps of the world, and all of them are considered actors, content creators. Everybody doesn't have to want to be a media company.
Yes.
Everyone doesn't have to want to have a manager. Everyone doesn't have to need to make a salary that they can live off of. They can do it because they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge difference. And I don't think people think about that with content creators. They just think, oh, they need to be the next MrBeast. They need to be the next Zhong. They need to do this. And it doesn't have to be that for them. And they can live a lovely life.
Yeah. It's your life. You know, you got to do what you want to do.
Now, I have this question and I'm always curious people's answers because I was on the traditional media side working with content creators, everyone from the MrBeasts and the Zhongs down to micro influencers for different campaigns. Do large creators need media companies right now, or can they do it on their own, or is it both? I'd love to hear your answer on this topic.
I do think that, large traditional media companies at a certain point do need content creators. And because of one thing, every single dollar that we earn is a dollar that would have traditionally been earned by, traditional media companies. Mm-hmm. We have created incredible communities that will follow us to wherever we go. And so at some point, you know, for example, Netflix has very deep pockets. Many studios many platforms have deep pockets. So at some point, I do feel, and it has begun happening already, is that I do think they're going to start to acquire our IP and sort of move us over into like, for example, Netflix. And they have very deep pockets. So I would not be surprised if they start to like push us in that direction. For what it's worth, there's also going to be creators who are kind of creating their own studio. So we are kind of considered like a mini studio, but again, I just wouldn't be surprised because they have very deep pockets, and I just wouldn't be surprised that they would be able to acquire lots of us.
But do you think the bigger creators need to do those deals, or no?
I think at a certain point, like it's really hard. So it's like, would you be enticed if somebody gave you a big check? And it's like, some people would say no, but some people really like to control their own IP and their own destiny. But you also have to realize that a lot of creators are in terms of like financial stability, like they're doing really well. So I do believe that some creators will resist the temptation and just be like, hey, I can do this on my own.
And then if you had to bet 5 years from now, and this is a popular question on every panel in the past like 3 years, as traditional and as creator borrows more and more from each other. In 5 years, do you think that big media companies are going to be leveraging creators in different ways than they're doing right now?
Oh, I definitely think it's starting. I think we're going to see a more advanced state of what we currently are doing. We have a lot of inbound interest from studios, from creator interest, but we're partly just part of the first wave of creators that are doing our own original series. I just think 5 years from now, you're going to see a lot more original series from content creators on things like Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus. And I just think the lines between content creator and traditional media is going to be incredibly blurred 5 years from now.
100%. And I actually think it's a good time to talk about like the way that we worked together before, which was when I was on the Paramount side, we would run massive creator programs, put creators in front of and behind the camera. Kids' Choice Awards was a huge moment for our audiences. So starting with the 25th anniversary of SpongeBob, we had 350 creators come. We had 3 creators make these massive tributes to SpongeBob. And then the year after, we had Zhong obviously build when we were doing something very different. You were on the receiving end of that. I was on the side making the offer. What intrigued you about doing something like that? Because it is a lot of time. Yeah. It is a lot of effort. And, what were you guys thinking on your end when the opportunity came and what excited you about it?
So when we look at brand partnerships, the main thing we first as a general principle, what we always operate is like, is this going to be good content? Is this good fit for our community? We would only do something if it's good for the community. And the one thing that we always think about when we work with the brand is like, is this a good mix? So for context, Zhong is like a family and kids creator. And so working with Nickelodeon at the Kids' Choice Awards is like an obvious, like clean combo of we should work with this brand because, it's a good fit for, our brand and it, brings more awareness to us as well as like Nickelodeon. So good fit is the answer.
Great. I love it. I'll take it. It was a good one. So Zhong, you mentioned kids and family. That is a crowded space, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Disney, whether it's Nickelodeon that is still making specific things and has a notable brand. How do you differentiate yourself being in that very, very crowded space?
I think and it's going to sound a bit cliche, but again, I think we have a relentless focus on our community. How can we constantly create better content for our community? It almost feels like every week we kind of live in like a state of regret. We would look at so after each YouTube video is published, we can see incredibly detailed analytics of where users dropped off, in terms of like what percentage users clicked through, our thumbnails. And so every single week we pour immense amount of time saying, we let this dialogue drag on too long. Oh, we let this bit was not exciting enough for our viewers. And so in what we believe is like our number one biggest differentiator is definitely just like our relentless obsession with creating great content for our community. And number two, I think tactically speaking, I think it always helps to have a larger budget.
Budgets are nice.
There's a lot of people in the space and we do try to increase the budget so that we can outcompete some other folks. But at the end of the day, we have had experience where we increased the budget and still lower budget has increased. Lower budget content has performed better. So I think at the end of the day, did you make a compelling story? That is still the number one priority, and that beats out budget like most times.
Is there anything you've done either in your tenure at Zhong or before with Alan or with Beast that you've tried something and it really did not work? Oh. Not just kind of didn't work, like really, really, really didn't work.
There's we've got a lot of war stories. Okay.
Give me your favorite that you can talk about.
Okay. So I had this belief So in financial services, I was working for content creators. We were like, hey, why don't I give you funding so that you can create more content? I was like, you make two pieces of content a month. What if you make 3 or 4? That's great, right? You're going to make more money. You're going to have audience growth. We tried that with Zhong.
And you funded it.
And we tried with Zhong.
Oh, okay,
we created more content. Instead of creating 4 pieces of long form, we created 6 pieces. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. Our communities is incredibly, especially the algorithm, is very sensitive to quality changes. If you spread yourself too thin, if you let dialogues drag on too long, if you reduce the quality of your packaging, which is your title, your thumbnail, any reduction that, they will smell it and they will punish you for it. And that point we had dropped, I think our total monthly views had dropped from like 400 million to like around 200. So we lost 50% of our views
by making more content.
Got
it.
So we're back to normal. We're back to around 500, 600 million views a month, but that's only because we decided to never ever compromise on quality. That was an extremely expensive mistake. Losing 50% of views was disastrous. So I guess it just goes to show that people keep saying the algorithm is there's a lot of scrutiny in the algorithm, and you have to make very high quality content.
100%. Then on the flip side, what is something that you've done as an operator that has made such a meaningful contribution to the creator that you were working for at the time that you're like, oh, it either garners a ton of money, it was a different business that we got into, or a change that you made across the board? What's something like that just made max impact for you?
I think it's giving the creators that I work with the space to do what they want to do. Most creators who entered the content business, they didn't enter it to do contracts. They didn't enter it to do performance management of employees. When I think of like doing that kind of, like, I'm literally negotiating like with the janitor of, how to do cleaning services for the production studio. These are things that really harm the content creator in terms of like, they could be spending that time creating the next viral piece of content. They could be spending that time figuring out more angles to the script, and giving back the creator that time is incredibly useful. And I think it's the best force multiplier that a creator can do, which is finding an operator to like take that load off of them.
There was a great conversation before this, if you missed it, in a panel that it talked a lot about creator mental health. And one of the things I think about all the time is that creators don't really have a way to retire depending on how their business is going. They kind of have to keep going forever. So how do you think about that with Zhong? Do you talk about the idea of that?
Yeah.
Do you talk about building a brand that can outlast him? Like, what is that conversation like?
So this is actually a lesson that I kind of took from my MrBeast days, which is, if you look at what MrBeast and I shouldn't just say MrBeast, even other creators doing this, they're creating sustainable brands that will outlive them. Feastables is going to continue to outlive Jimmy. ViewStats is another beast-backed company, is going to continue to outlive Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Step, which is they're just invested in another bank, that's also going to outlive, assuming the bank does well, hypothetically would outlast MrBeast. And so that's kind of like the same principles that we take at Zhong, which is how do we create a lasting brand that will outlive us? And which is, again, why we keep looking into things like consumer products. I think consumer products is our next big move, but even beyond consumer products, we always think about, hey, what's the next big, like, strategic business that we can invest into?
Incredible. And then you've worked with a lot of like the upper echelon of creators. And I know we talked about how size doesn't always matter because the issues are still the same, but how could a smaller creator use some of the playbook that you utilize with people like Alan and Jimmy and Zhong?
Okay, so I actually we had a big team with my team about this, and so this is actually straight from like a pooled knowledge of—
Wait, after our prep call, you guys talked about it?
Yeah, we
I love it.
I had a prep call
doing the work
with the production team and the scriptwriter team, and so they said one of the key things that smaller creators can do is you can look at, so let's say phase one. Phase one is kind of like find the niche that you want to live in. So Is it going to be cooking? Is it going to be, I don't know, tractor trailers? By the way, tractor trailers are a very big hit in like the Midwest. So it's like whatever niche you want, find it, right? So number one is kind of like exploring where you want to live. And then phase two is finding the top creators within that niche and really studying them to like the bolts. So for example, what their posting cadence is, what their packaging look like, their titles, how long their videos are, the structure of their videos. So for example, is it a hook? Is there a twist? How many twists are there? And so the best thing you could do as a creator starting out is to sort of be inspired by the best creators in your niche, because at least you can start to perform at that level, as opposed to, and even though you're just starting out, you can gain a lot just by learning and sort of in some ways mirroring, but obviously not copying, being inspired, by the top creators in your niche. And just by continuing the cadence of what they're literally, if they're posting 3 times a week, you post 3 times a week. Just by sort of following along that cadence, you'd be shocked at how well you can perform.
Well, because they're following like best practices, which is really interesting. But it's shocking to me how many creators, specifically with thumbnails, it drives me crazy when I go to somebody's page and see like a really bad banner and not great thumbnails or no thumbnails, graphics or anything at all. I don't want to click on their content. It's crazy to me how many people do not study the people that have done this the best.
Yeah. I think another creator said it the best. YouTube is an opt-in platform. It's not like when you're on TikTok. If you're on TikTok, you don't really opt into what you see other than, maybe your subscribers or what you follow. But when you're flipping on TikTok, you're kind of being served content, right? On YouTube, it's opt in. So you actually have to select the next piece of content that you want to watch. So the packaging matters a lot.
Got it. And then for you, and this is something that I'm dealing with in a very different scenario of running a management company, but you can build in-house and there are pros and cons to it. When do you decide whether to partner with someone or to build in-house? How do you make that decision?
So I think it's going to be on a case by case basis. On the production side, we film like 3 to 4 times a week, every single week for the entire year. And so
Christmas week?
Well, Christmas week, before the Christmas week, we double our filming schedule so that we have enough content to release that day. So
I knew it was coming. It's the week before and you're like suffering a little bit.
Oh, it's the 3 weeks before we suffer a lot.
Yeah.
We run on an SNL schedule, which is really intense. So it's like from script to production, it's like a week to 2 weeks. It's like very intense turnaround. And so sorry, what was the question again?
No, it's fine. I got distracted too. How do you decide whether to build in-house
for the production team? We build in-house as much as possible. So we try to nurture talent. We hire internally the entire chain. So for example, everybody from the scriptwriter to the DP, it is on a full-time basis. It's almost like producing a TV series. We don't really need freelancers for that. And so when you hire in-house, it's a little bit different dynamic. Mm-hmm. You get to build them. You get to build their careers. You get to have performance management talks with them, which is, a fancy corporate term for like, hey, what can we do? What did we do this month? And what can we do better next month? We can also wrap it in our ecosystem of like goals. Like, hey, this month our goal is 100 million long-form views. We have a target goal of 125 million views for next quarter. Like, how can we get there? So when we hire internally, it's easier to sort of wrap them within our like organizational performance management structure. There's actually plenty of stuff that we cannot hire internally. So for example, we're getting into like an original show that we're producing. Sorry, we're not producing, but we're doing an original show that's going to appear on whoever buys the show. And so we do not have experience creating a full-fledged TV series that's going to air on Netflix or Disney or something. So we don't have that experience. That stuff we're kind of forced to hire outside. But
and the network probably wants that too because
the network probably wants that too. So the studio space has, we're new to it, but there's an incredible amount of lingo that they have and a certain way they do things. So like we just don't have, and that's just not something that we can hire internally because we can't even teach them what to do. Mm-hmm. So that's something that we have to outsource. But wherever we can, we try to just do internal.
And then for you, you've already had such an incredible career and it seems like you figured out the right time to move on.
Yeah.
So like for you, how do you decide and know the moment's done? And separately, you can apply that towards even things with Zhong that you're working on. When do you know how to move on a project or something that's not working? Like, do you follow your gut? Is it a big discussion?
Sure.
Is it you and Zhong talking about it? Like, what is that process of moving on, like both for you personally and also at work?
So in terms of working with Zhong, I kind of take this. So for about a decade, I work in like tech startups. And so one of the principles that I pull from there, which is most of the times decisions just need to be made quickly, and speed of execution matters more than anything. And so we're very happy to take, so for example, for going from 4 to 6 videos tanked our revenue and our views. It's something we tried, we learned, but that hit only occurred for maybe like a quarter, and then we rebounded the next quarter, but we learned an incredible lesson. And we're actually about to go back to 6 videos a month and 6 long form videos a month. But now it's only because we executed and learned so quickly that we feel much more confident in doing that in this time around. So
the difference now is the quality is going to stay the same, and you figured out how to execute it. First, before when you were making 6 videos and the quality was not the same.
We learned how to scale our team, our production. And so it's more of like speed of execution is incredibly important. I feel like a lot of times, a lot of teams, they get analysis paralysis. You're going to learn much faster just by going out there and failing and making a fool of yourself. Like, just speed of execution is everything in my view.
Amazing. And then they're in the types of positions that you're in, that I'm in, like these sorts of positions, there's wins that you have, obviously, but like, there's always something or a million things that you can be doing in the moment.
Yeah.
So how do you consider success? Like, what are the moments where you feel successful? If you do, or is that something that you're still figuring out your relationship with success at a job that, again, there's always something that you can do or fix or tweak, and you can always do better. So what is that like for you?
I actually think, even though there's a million things you could be doing, I actually think it's in some ways kind of like a facade. There's really a very few amount of things that you should be focusing on a day-to-day basis. So for example, we are choosing a partner to create an original TV series. On that day, I could have made several hundred different, decisions. That is like one decision that's really important because it defines who we're going to be working with for maybe a year or maybe even longer. And so making sure that which 2 to 3 decisions that you need to make on a day-to-day basis is going to affect everything. Mm-hmm. And the rest is just kind of like just in the ether, prioritizing which decisions will make the biggest difference in your business, in your daily life, I think is the most important. And just like finding out which decisions that you need to really focus your like mental load on.
And then how do you feel that success in those moments? Like, are there moments where, like after Kids' Choice Awards, for example, where you like, I feel proud of this, and then you move on to the next thing? Or is it hard to feel success in the type of position you're in?
I think it's definitely hard to feel success because, I talked about certain creators where, you believe you're doing it for the art. I'm not doing it for the art. I'm doing it to create, well, in some ways it is an art, but I'm doing it to create an empire, a multifaceted empire that could, survive beyond the creator. And so for me, that's what success is, creating kind of like a critical mass to where we have created multiple business revenue lines, multiple brands, something that truly is like a legacy project that can outlast the creator. For me, that's success. That is personally something I believe in, but it is not a very good management philosophy in terms of like managing things on a day-to-day basis. We love to celebrate the little wins. So for example, when we hit 500 million views, we had a big celebration with the team. When we hit the next, 25 million views, we're going to celebrate that. So it's also important to celebrate the small wins because it's a marathon. This is a very long journey. And so, on the flip side, I do believe it's very important to celebrate the small wins as much as you can.
And that's actually interesting. Win and then success are different things that are kind of related.
Yeah, I guess that's true, yeah.
But I think that that's interesting is the wins collectively add up to eventual success, hopefully. But maybe for people like you and I, success is, there's going to be a next thing after that. So maybe it's an interesting standard to hold ourselves to.
I feel like that is the case because it's like, it's almost like an insatiable like sensation to like keep winning.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, at some point you do have to stop and like smell your surroundings, smell the flowers, smell your successes and kind of like relish in it.
Well, I think you're wildly successful, so you have it for me. We're over technically, but we have time for one question. Does one person here have a great question for John? Anybody? And I'll run over to you with this mic. Oh, good. Amazing. He volunteered as tribute. Here you go. Here you go, Christian.
Thank you very much.
Here you go.
So real quick, I know some people here are probably starting out just like me. I'm a start new creator. So what would you, I guess, suggest to a new creator like me that's just starting out and trying to build an empire, like you say?
I would say, it's some of what I said earlier in terms of like, finding your niche and really figuring out what you want to play in. So whether that's, you know, a personal pet desire you have, and then really figuring out that top creator in your segment and really mimicking the tactics that they use. I think a lot of creators sort of underestimate how nuanced YouTube long form is. And one of the other strategies that I didn't mention earlier is short form is a lot easier to start. Alan Chikin Chow, Zhong are both creators that are, their origins were actually from the short space. Alan at that time, he spent only one day. So Alan is a large family, kids and content. He now has 100 million subscribers. He started just by dedicating one day a week to doing like 5 to 6 shorts. That's it. And just by doing that on a consistent basis, and it's really cheap. It's just you and you can get a bunch of your friends to do a bunch of shorts together and just like keep going at it. That itself will get you like in the zone of learning. And then the second thing is, you know, the things that I said earlier, which you should be applying, which is of the creators in the space that you want to play in, you know, how can you utilize the best practices that they're doing? And best practices is like very hard for the starter creators to see. So best practices, you have to pay attention. So we are obsessed with analytics. Every single second, we care about retention. We care about, you know, average view duration. We care about video length. We obsess over your analytics and keep learning and keep trying to do better on your analytics. And that itself, you know, can get you pretty far.
And one thing that I'll add to that is short form is easier when you're an earlier creator to experiment and find what's actually going to work for you. People spend a lot of time obviously on shorts, but they spend a lot longer on long form content. And say you make a ton of content and it keeps failing. You've invested so much time in it. So I recommend to every short form creator, they have to figure out long form, but in the beginning, testing it, doing short form, you're going to be able to throw a lot more things at the wall and see what the algorithm really appreciates.
One thing I've said earlier, we have around 20 to 25 billion views. The first 10 to 15 billion views, we're just on an iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we didn't have a crazy setup. You know, it's just a Zhong and a bunch of friends just recording, doing research, finding some trending topics, and they're just like filming it in their backyard. So like, you don't need crazy expensive setups. You don't need, you know, good content, good dialogue, good chemistry, good tension, good drama, good hook. It still can overcome like crazy production budgets.
Well, amazing. That was a great way to wrap out this conversation. Thank you to John. We have one more panel coming up, which is talking about LinkedIn for creators. I'm super excited about this one. I think it's the most underutilized platform for creators. And so come back here. It's coming up shortly, and then we'll wrap out this lovely third day at the Creator Lab for NAB. Thank you guys so much. See you in a little bit. And thank you, John, again.
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.